You guys seem to be enjoying these. Welcome to, I guess, another episode of me just talking about the NBA. The draft is a few days away. I actually have to leave Tuesday morning to New York City. I'm flying into Newark Airport, staying in New York. Tuesday at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. We have media availability with who is it that they said we're meeting? Basically, everyone who's going to be in the green room. So at 2 p.m., we have Devin Carter, Tristan Da Silva, Ron Holland, Zachary Rissache, Tijan Saloon, Alex Sarr, Khalil Ware, Cody Williams. At 2:35, we'll be able to interview Carlton Carrington, Isaiah Collier, Rob Dillingham, Keyshawn George, Deron Holmes II, Eves Messi, Reed Shepard, and Jacoby Walter. And then at 3:05, Matas Buzelis, Stefan Castle, Donovan Klingen, Kyle Filipowski, Johnny Furphy, Dalton Connect, Jared McCain, and Nikola Topic. We'll get as many of those interviews as we possibly can while at the Combine. Goal is hopefully to then upload all those, not off the Combine, the night of the draft. Hopefully get all those uploaded before the draft starts on the following day, because that's Tuesday. Then Wednesday will be the draft, and then Thursday is the second round, and then I come home Friday morning. Yeah. So Tuesday I land in New York, have the interviews with all those prospects, then or media availability. Then we got Wednesday and Thursday, which is draft night, which is also weird. First night of the draft is at the Barclays Center. Second night of the draft is at the Seaport ESPN studios, which, again, this is the first year of us having a multi-night draft. It's going to be interesting. But again, guys, while I'm at the draft, I'll try to upload as much content that I get while I'm there as soon as I can. I'll have all my equipment with me, but it's more sense I'm going to be running around and just first off doing stuff for my job, like that I have with Hoops Hype, because that's kind of, they pay me and they're kind of like priority. But then as soon as I can, I'll upload all the NBA draft stuff. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And today, what we are specifically talking about, let's look at the itinerary. Hit that like and subscribe button if you guys are listening on Spotify or any of the streaming, because we've been putting this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. Today, we'll be talking about, by the way, my sense was saying, hit the rating button there. But today we'll be talking about Knicks may pursue Paul George. If he opts in, they'll seek a trade. Utah Jazz may trade Walker Kessler. The Mavericks and Jazz are interested potentially in Tobias Harris. Sixers and Magic targeting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Al Horford confirms he'll play next season. Warriors want to pursue a trade before engaging, or pursue trade market before engaging Klay Thompson on a contract. Sixers and Jazz are downplaying their interest in Zach LaVine. The Mavericks are attempting to trade Tim Hardaway Jr. 8 centers could be drafted in the first round of the 2024 NBA draft. Tom Gores wants Pistons to add players in free agency. Kenny Atkinson is the favorite to land the Cavaliers job. The Phoenix Suns are open to moving the number 22 pick. Milwaukee Bucks might trade Brook Lopez. And the Mavericks are interested in Jerami Grant, while the Clippers and Lakers are interested in Chris Paul. So, with that being today's show, we will get right into those said topics. Now, let's start off with the first thing that we brought up, and that is good old Paul George. And Paul George is always a great talking point, because for a lot of people, he's a guy that they like, that they think he's going to be someone that could help their team go from looking on the outside in. Would that be the right way to phrase it? I also need to shave. Like, that is, after this, we are shaving, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what I think is incredibly interesting about the idea of a potential addition like Paul George. Let's read what the report is, and this is coming from Mark Stein of the Stein Line. And Mark Stein's a very, very veteran reporter in the NBA, so a lot of the stuff he takes, especially if it's coming out about Dallas, it's very, very, it holds its weight in gold, weight in gold. And now let's just get right into this, and let's talk about the Knicks potentially going out and getting Paul George. Also, I want to say that Paul George, a lot of teams are interested in him because of his seamlessness to fit and how he's aged very well, and his game is expected to continue to age well, and he plays both sides of the floor. But I digress. Paul George is considered to be the key free agent domino by at least one NBA team. That's a sentiment shared by many teams, especially the ones that have cap space this year in free agency. And if George hits free agency, which many people expect him to do, as he is not satisfied with the 3-year, $152 million contract extension offer that the Clippers have put in front of him, now he's expected to have several suitors. We heard from the Sixers, the Orlando Magic, to dark horses like the Thunder, the Spurs. Who else could we throw in there? Any team with a cap space. And that may be true, especially if he doesn't sign an extension. Even if George takes another path and opts into his contract, which is kind of doing a favor to the Clippers, and seeks a trade as a sign and trade, that will open up the market, as the Clippers star in free agency would be able to pursue him via sign and trade. And one of the teams that may be interested in trading for an opted in George would be New York Knicks. A lack of cap space plus potential hard cap issues would arise via sign and trade, and that would keep Nick from pursuing George unless he opts into the deal next season and then he signs an extension 6 months from now. You're like, wait, so there's 3 possibilities, what I just mentioned, and I made that kind of sound a little bit hard. There's the one where if he goes into unrestricted free agency, only X amount of teams can sign him because of cap space available and the money he wants. Second option, sign and trade. He helps the Clippers out. They get some assets back and he signs and trade. But again, that limits which teams he can go to because the potential obstacles that you would have to face, such as cap space and hard cap issues that arise from sign and trades. So again, limits the market of teams. However, if he now opts into his contract, says, actually, I'll play on that $48 million player option I have this year, I can then sign an extension, I believe 6 months from the day I'm traded. So if he's traded today, he can then sign an extension basically Christmas Eve. And that extension could be for whatever they want. And then it's easier because he's under contract and you can go over the cap to extend him. So a team like the Knicks would be more interested in pursuing him if he were to opt in, because he'd have to wait 6 months, but it could eventually work out an extension with the new team, and extend and trade transactions also possible, but less likely. Now, as we always do, because we're talking about the New York Knicks, because we're doing this, you guys seem to like this, we got to do the good all fan spo trade machine. And just beast up, sign and trade for Paul George is incredibly unlikely. If the Clippers resign, they will not trade him. He's more likely to leave in free agency. The sign and trade, when they do the sign and trade, they're not the ones who negotiate the contract. For example, it's really the Knicks who are putting it there. And again, like you said, I don't think a sign and trade likely. It's more of an opt-in trade. So let's go ahead and do a Knicks Clippers deal. And again, the Clippers really don't care for picks. In my opinion, I don't see the Clippers sitting here and doing picks. You're assuming that he opts into the $48 million deal. And this is where it gets hard, because they're going to build the deal around Bojan. My thoughts is that they're going to want to send Mitchell Robinson in this deal because they want to keep Isaiah Hartenstein. My thoughts then is this becomes hard because you're sending $33 million on right here. You come back at 48. At this point, they do want picks to an extent because then they can repurpose. But I'm trying to see if there's, because player-wise, I don't see like any. I mean, you could throw in Daquan Jeffries if you're just trying to match the money, but I don't see the Clippers necessarily being interested in Julius Randle or anyone. Or they're not, and the Knicks aren't going to offer DiVincenzo a heart. OG's coming back. Isaiah Hartenstein's expected to come back. You could say we throw in Mamadi Diakite and Daquan Jeffries just as salary filler. I think the Knicks like Jericho Sims. Plus, you're already sending the Mitchell Robinson, and that you'd assume Zubats and Mitchell Robinson would be the rotation they'd want, and Jericho Sims. So even let's say this is the deal, and they're like, hey, here you go. You can take both of our first round picks this year, and guess what? You can have our first round pick next year because we expect us to be good. Okay, so you technically get 3 first-round picks, and you get ourselves Bojan Bogdanovic, Mitchell Robinson, Daquan Jeffries, Mamadi Diakite, and 3 first. I don't see the Knicks being willing to offer anything more than that. I don't see and nor do I see the Clippers wanting Julius Randle as the only other player that I think the Knicks maybe might offer. And besides that, I think Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo and Jalen Brunson are obviously off the table. So what is this deal really going to look like? And that's where it becomes very, very hard for me to see the Knicks, if they were to be pursuing Paul George, if they're not going to offer Julius Randle, and they're obviously not going to offer any of the Villanova boys, what are they going to offer the Clippers besides that? It has to be this. And then you'd assume the Clippers would turn around and they're going to, they probably want to keep Mitchell Robinson, but you'd assume then Boyan and Daquan Jeffries. This is why you would then assume, let's hypothetically then say, okay, let's say the Clippers are cool, but they want you to reroute those assets. Maybe you do call up a team like the Wizards and you're like, look, the only player that the Clippers want is Mitchell Robinson. We have Boyan, Mamadi Diakite, and Boyan right there. Those salaries are $23 million we could send you. Are there some players you could maybe send, like a Clippers get back, Landry Shamet, and then again, but then this becomes a problem, is like outside of Landry Shamet, I don't think there's anyone that the Clippers would actually care about. So this would make a trade to DC not a good one. So let's go over to, maybe we go up to the north and we call up Portland and we're like, hey, Portland, how does Daquan Jeffries, Mamadi Diakite, Boyan Bogdanovic sound? All right, you got a lot of salaries that we know you're trying to get off of. That's $23 million we just sent you. So how does the Clippers getting Matisse Thybulle and somebody that could have interest for them? This becomes hard. Maybe I think Tamani Kamara is a bit older, so that's why maybe you could say Clippers take on Tamani Kamara. And do you think Delano Banton would be someone that have interest? I don't think they would want. I think something right here. What about this? What about this? Okay, and then you go over to the picks that you just sent, and you send you send next year's to the Blazers, and you only keep one pick this year. Does this work for everybody involved? Yes, it does. I think this is the better deal. Okay, Clippers trade Paul George. They walk away with Malcolm Brogdon, Mitchell Robinson, Matisse Thybulle. Why do they still have the picks? No, let me readjust this. The picks need to be, where are the picks? Knicks, that's how it should be. Yeah, there we go. This is how it ends up looking. So Clippers walk away with one pick in this deal, which is the 24 overall pick in this year's draft. And then they get themselves Tamani Kamara, Matisse Thybulle, Mitchell Robinson, and Malcolm Brogdon. The Blazers walk away with the Knicks next year pick and a pick this year. They also get themselves Boyan Bogdanovic, who then they could use as a salary filler. They move off of Brogdon. They move off of Matisse Thybulle, and they move off of Tamani Kamara. That helps the Clippers bench, and the Knicks walk away with Paul George. I think everybody wins here. Look, technically speaking, Clippers don't even get that, like, just get a little bit worse offensively, but defensively, you could argue, like, not bad right there. That's not a bad deal for if we go into the Paul George whole scenario, but that's my thoughts on that one. I think that one's definitely going to be an interesting one. I think when you look at it, because I'm a big fan of what they're trying to do over there in New York, and I like how Leon Rose is going about getting getting contracts that are easy to move. And I think that's going to be a big part of how they go about the next stages of this, trying to get into contention, basically. And yeah, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you guys expect and why? I think it's going to be an interesting offseason, and every minute that passes, I think it gets even more exciting because there's so many teams that are like close to being able to compete. And if they play their hand right, they really could be a team that's competing. So I think that's the exciting part to me, at least on that side of things. Maybe that's just me, but yeah, let's get into the next topic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know some people don't want to hear it. My girlfriend lives in Colorado. Shout out, my girlfriend got into the University of Miami Law. She just finished up her first year at University of Denver Law, but she transferred to Miami Law and she got in yesterday. So she's moving in with me. She'll be here in August because she's like doing an internship. So finally went to college together for 4 years, and it's like our first year apart. But either way, the Sixers and Magic are expected to target Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in free agency. And first off, I love this fit for the Magic. Okay, so the way I've seen it is everyone's like, oh, the Sixers and Magic should go after Klay Thompson and Paul George. But I've said all offseason that the Sixers already tried Buddy Hield, but I've said the Magic should look at Buddy Hield and Luke Kennard as as options that are cheaper, giving you almost the similar shooting effect that those two other guys would give you. I know that, they give you more than that, just that. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Sixers and Magic would love a guy, championship pedigree, 2 rings, 2 separate teams, been a role player, been a starter, been off a bench guy, has a lot to offer as a leader. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's expected to decline his player option, and he's becoming an increasingly sought after free agent target by a plethora of teams. And why not? You get yourself a guy who he's been on teams where, if they're not a contending team, he is a 15, 16 points per game guy. On a contending team, he is a guy who's going to give you 12 a night, but 3-and-D, super efficient. What he shot this year, just under 41%, year before 42%, 10 points a night, 11 points the year before. On the Wizards, he was 13, then back on those Lakers days and Pistons day, 13, 14, almost a 15 point per game guy. So we know that's there. And the Denver Nuggets are unable to sign Caldwell-Pope to an extension. The veteran is expected to decline his option and become a free agent, which means they can still sign him to an extension, I think, until a week from today when the free agency period does start. And in free agency, the Philadelphia 76ers and Orlando Magic are 2 teams that are rumored to have signing interest in signing Caldwell-Pope. I expect Caldwell-Pope. Both teams have plenty of cap space. Philadelphia has the most in the entire league. Orlando, I think, top 5 most in the league, as the Sixers are overhauling their roster around Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and they can go over the cap to sign Tyrese Maxey. So the expectation is they spend a bunch of money, then they go over the cap to re-sign Tyrese. Caldwell-Pope's the perfect, 4th option, 5th option on a team for the Philadelphia 76ers, while Orlando's looking for a backcourt mate to upgrade from Gary Harris next to Jalen Suggs. And the Magic have a limited spending window of 2 years basically before they have to give extensions to Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner's, and those are expected to kick in by 25 and 26. And Mark Stein's the one who's reporting that the Magic and Sixers are interested in Caldwell-Pope, and the expectation is you give them, you remember JJ Redick when he was a free agent, you give him a deal like that. You either do 1-year deal, $20 million, or a 2-year deal, $40 million, or a 1-year, $25 million, or a 2-year, $50 million, depending on how it is, or maybe a 2+1, which is a 3-year deal with 2 years, and then the 3rd year being a non-guaranteed team option. So kind of puts you in a situation to use that money to flip Caldwell-Pope in the 3rd year if you wanted to. Now, if he goes to Philadelphia, he's going to be having a chance to truly chase a ring and play a similar role that he's playing right now. If he goes to Orlando, I think Orlando is going to give him a role that Gary Harris this past season played 24 minutes a night. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would probably play a little bit more, maybe 28 again, but it would still be kind of similar. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would probably be in between a role, either between closer to what he was on the Lakers during those championship years, or he'd be a guy closer to what he's on the Nuggets, but still just a 9-10 points guy. He's just be a guy who's expected to play defense, be a leader in the locker room, and help cultivate a championship expectation amongst either roster. I, as an Orlando Magic fan, as you guys know, I'm an Orlando Magic, Washington Wizards, and Minnesota Timberwolves fan, was born in Minnesota, lived 4 years of my life in Orlando, and then my folks still live in the Baltimore suburbs area, but first year I moved to Maryland. John Wall, that following spring, John Wall was the player that the Wizards were drafted. Got to live 11 years in Maryland full time, and then obviously I go back regularly to visit my folks. But so the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope being as a guy I saw play for the Wizards, and then we've got to see him a lot during the Nuggets run, because when I went to school in Kansas, the Denver Nuggets and Oklahoma City Thunder, you get like a lot of those games. So he's somebody that I really like. He's a very efficient guy, and I think you need to if he wants another ring, you go to the Sixers. If you want to be a part of something, maybe make a little bit more money, I think you go to the Orlando. I think those are going to be the deciding factors for a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. What do you guys think? I think definitely the way that free agency is playing out, it's going to be, I think, a lot more shorter term deals than we typically see. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think teams are going to prioritize having the cap flexibility down the road than handicapping themselves to long-term deals that are hard to move, that are going to have to require assets to move. So I think that's just the whole juxtaposition you're going to be seeing more and more as like the new aprons with the new collective bargaining agreements play effects into how teams are managed and built so you can prioritize winning, etc. But let's get into the next topic, and that is we got a little Mr. Al Horford is expected to come back and play. Expected to come back and play. This is coming from Jared Weiss of The Athletic. Al Horford confirms he will play. Cheers to that. A little sip. What does this mean? They're getting their vet back. I also think they have a window right now, legitimately. Boston Celtics are really good. They're going to be hard to unseat. My dad's a Boston Celtics fan. One of Luke, the Legal Eagle, who we haven't had on in a while, is a big Boston Celtics fan. And I lived in Maryland, so I knew about a bunch of Boston Celtics fans. So for me, this is a team that they get their vet, the 38-year-old who just turned 38. He came off a season, he played 26 minutes a night, gave you about 8 points, 51% from the field, 41%. And I do think similar minutes next year, maybe closer to 20. I still think he'll be efficient. Regardless, they're going to have to bring in some depth to help alleviate those minutes and to not put too much of an over-reliance on Kristaps Porzingis, who's also, going to be coming off of surgery. So, and I do believe Neemias Queta, who is still under contract for next year, is going to be someone that going to replace the Luke Kornet's a free agent, and they're not going to bring back Luke Kornet is the expectation. So I think they pick up the team option on Neemias, but they're going to have to bring somebody back. Hopefully Xavier comes back, but I still don't think that's enough. But Al Horford coming back, it's going to be his 18th season. He says he's coming back, and I think this is probably last year, unless he signs an extension, and I'd be shocked if he signs an extension and plays more than another year. But I think he does one more year. You win a championship. Let's see if we can run it back. It's something deserving. And I think when you look at the free agency market, when it comes to who's available, specifically front court players, either centers or guys who can play small ball five to help Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, and again Neemias, because I do think Neemias this year he didn't play. I want to say he played 10 minutes a night and only appeared in like 11 minutes a night, 28 games he appeared in most of his career, and he got converted at the end. But Luke Kornet this past season played specifically. I think he played a bunch more games, but he played also 15 minutes a night, 63 games. And I think that's Luke's also 28. So I think they'll go for a cheaper option and a younger guy. So who could that be? I mean, Jalen Smith could be a guy that they could like. Maybe they try for a Precious Achiuwa, or maybe they go for a veteran like Dario Saric. I think Goga Bitadze. Because the thing is first off, Jalen Smith's going to be is a mobile big man who can play the 4 or the 5. He can hit threes, protect the paint, and play with energy. He's really good in a microwave role. Dario Saric is another guy, small ball center, can play the 4 or the 5, can even play the 3. And I think he's too slow now, but he moves the ball, makes winning plays. A little bit of you're going to suffer defensively though with him. Precious Achiuwa is just an energy big man who's extremely athletic and just finishes around the rim, but he's a pest on defense, so in a good way. And he'll shoot the threes, but he's not great at it. Then you got like Goga Bitadze, who's a bruising big, sets screens, will go for rebounds, fights on the glass, and he might not block a ton of shots, but he'll contest things. Drew Eubanks is another guy, or bringing back a Daniel Tice, I think could be very interesting. Same thing with like a Mason Plumlee. But at that point, wouldn't you just go and bring back Xavier Tillman? And those are your pure bigs, I think, the ones that are, you could say, are like that are available. I think then if you're looking at the rest of guys who could be available in terms of power forwards, who could also moonlight as a small ball big, it gets a little bit dicier. I mean, if Kevin Love was, I don't think he's be a guy that'd go after either way. And yeah, I think those are their best options. I mean, unless Anthony Gill's a guy who is a power forward with some shooting ability and ball handling skills, but he at the point he's such a bottom of the bench guy. No offense, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and the same thing going on there. It's just you're really picking at scraps at that point, and there's the Dre Crowders, but like that's not what you really want. Kenrich Williams, if you could trade for him. So I think the center options I listed there are the ones you would have to try to see if you can help pair. And like Drew Eubanks isn't going to set the world on fire, but I think Goga Bitsaday, I think would be a really good option for them to help give some size. If Jonas Valanciunas is cheap, I think he's good. I really like the idea of a Jalen Smith, a Precious Achua, or a Goga Bitsaday if they were to go get a big to be behind Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford and help Neemias Queta with some of those minutes. As I think they shouldn't be putting too much pressure on any of the bigs and maybe go during the regular season by this big center by committee approach, as I think that might be more suited for how they want to play this offseason. But I think that's definitely, take it how you may. I don't know. I'm curious. What is your guys' thoughts? I think one of the things that we're looking at when we look at this situation is just making sure that they can. I think the most important part for the Boston Celtics is making sure their front court stays intact or is still able, because I think their thing that they've struggled at any time is size, and this year they addressed it. They had size available all year, and I just think they need to keep their size available all year, if that makes sense. Now let's move on. Now, guys, the next guy, trade market news, Klay Thompson. What do you guys expect here? The Warriors want to pursue the trade market before engaging Klay Thompson on a contract. What does that mean? Does that mean we're going to sit down, we're going to talk contracts? What are we doing here? So the report from Anthony Slater of The Athletic is the Golden State Warriors and Klay Thompson have essentially frozen their talks on a new contract with the opening of free agency just a few days away. There's no deal currently on the table from the Warriors and no productive discussions at this point. So, what does that mean? The Warriors would like to re-sign Thompson if the contract and role match their vision, according to sources that told The Athletic. Golden State, however, views his situation as being one that can work on they can work on once they explore other potential ways of addressing the rosters. The lack of urgency on the part of the Warriors could reflect the way they view Thompson's market. The Warriors are seeking ways of making a larger update by trading Chris Paul's non-guaranteed $30 million contract. Golden State has discussed the possibility of extending his guarantee date back from June 28th into July. Despite initial mutual interest, there's no traction between Thompson and the Orlando Magic, and the rest of the Thompson's market is unclear at this point. Even if the Warriors were to match or exceed the money in years Thompson's offered from another team, sources say he could choose to leave regardless for a fresh start somewhere else, which I guess makes sense at that point. But okay, I just feel like that's just somewhat of a lateral move. Now, is there a market? Any fans of you guys want to pay him like 20-25 million? And I think the problem is when he fits a lot of teams because he complements people, but I just don't see a team swinging their assets or two for him. And that's where this becomes complicated to figure out where or how you would be able to do a deal for Klay Thompson without giving up. I just don't see a team paying Klay Thompson while also, because how much is he going for? I don't see him going more than $20 million a year. And if the Golden State Warriors and Chris Paul are discussing extending his guarantee date from back June 28th into July, like Anthony Slater mentioned, the Warriors then could continue to keep the trade options available to them as the offseason business plays out. If Paul becomes a free agent, he'll surely sign for a number less than $30 million, and this increases the possibility that his contract becoming guaranteed. Paul could be incentivized by the Warriors if they make part of the contract guaranteed and later eventually waive him. Paul has maintained his bird rights throughout his career, opting into contracts in 2017 to orchestrate a trade from the Los Angeles Clippers to the Rockets. While under contract with the Rockets, he was traded to the Thunder and then again to the Suns. The Golden State believe they have serious enough interest in exploring the trade market, whether they are choosing to engage on Klay Thompson trades or not. So for that to happen, I just I look at this and I'm just, what are we thinking? What are we thinking? If you're the Nets, do you want Chris Paul to join Mikal Bridges and you send them like Dorian Finney-Smith and De'Ron Sharp? I don't know. I feel like that you're already paying too much for Chris Paul. Mavs aren't going to give you anything. It's not like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Maxi Kleber are an upgrade for the Warriors. The Spurs, they can just eat the contract, and the only thing they'd offer them is Devontae Graham, maybe Zach Collins, Malachi Branham, and Blake Wesley. The Portland Trailblazers, you want Matisse Thybulle, Malcolm Brogdon, Tamani Kamara, Robert Williams. I think that's the whole thing you're looking at here. If you're the Warriors, if you're exploring the trade market with Chris Paul, and then Klay Thompson, what are you paying him? What are you paying Klay Thompson? I just don't think realistically. I don't see that this is another deal. Like now, first off, you have to do Boyan, so it would be Boyan, Deuce, Sims, a first and 1 second round pick. I don't know. I agree. Just look, I think it's in both parties' best interest just to move on. And here we go. We'll go to fans. But I think let's do a sign and trade. I think it's in everybody's best interest to do a sign and trade. He leaves, but he says, hey guys, I'm not going to leave you out in the wind. All right. He goes, look, I won't leave you guys hanging dry, and we'll just go ahead and we'll do a sign and trade to, I feel like the Orlando is like the best fit. And let's say Orlando goes, look, we don't want to pay you to like the excessive contract you want, but let's count out how much money they're trying to dish. So Joe Ingles, I think, is somebody that they would want to get rid of. Who else would they want to get rid of contractually off this team? Do you think they want to keep Caleb Houston? Let's just say Caleb Houston gets thrown in there because of money reasons. Outside of that, do you think having Wendell Carter in that deal would be realistic or no? I think they want to keep Jonathan Isaac. Right now, they're only sending $13 million. If you throw in Wendell Carter, it brings that to 24.9. So 24.9. And then, yeah, I think that's realistically modified contract, standard contract, 2-year deal, and we'll go 24.9. I guess you got to do. There you go. 2 years, 24.9. Sign and trade for Klay Thompson. And what if do the Warriors throw in? I think they go lottery protected. Nah. Yeah, do you go lottery protect? Yeah, lottery protected pick in this deal. Is this too much? Oh, it must be. Oh, so it has to be a 3 or a 4 year. All right. Okay, we'll do a team option, modified contract. So it's got to be a 3-year deal. Now, can we make it that the third year is? I want to make it that the third year is non-guaranteed. Okay, so just understand that the third year is a non-guaranteed team option. First 2 years fully guaranteed. What do you guys think about this? Warriors walk away with Wendell Carter, Joe Ingles, and Caleb Houston. Klay Thompson goes on a 2+1, which means 24 and 25, he makes fully guaranteed 24.9, 24.9. Then in 2026, right here, it's a non-guaranteed team option. So they basically could decline it and send him there. But I think that's not a bad deal. Like, there's definitely worse things they could do. What do you guys think? I do think it's a interesting situation that's brewing out there, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the whole situation and if they're going to be able to get anything for Klay if he were to leave, or if he's just gonna leave and they're gonna be standing there empty-handed. I just think if he's going to leave, please sign and trade him so you're not dumb and just let him walk, because losing somebody uncompensated, I think, is the worst thing you could possibly do in the NBA. The NBA, it's so easy to get compensation that, like, I've always thought it's almost criminal to not take advantage of, being able to trade a contract if necessary. Maybe that's just me, but that's my 2 cents on that one. And let's just get right into our next topic. And you guys are going to laugh about this, but we got to talk about it. And there is a man that a lot of people, depending on what's your opinion of the situation, you might like the guy, you might think he's decent. I think it's, again, subjective to if you're a fan of the team or not. I think if you're a fan of the team, you definitely don't like the guy, but that's not your fault. And that is Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a guy that the good old Utah Jazz and Philadelphia 76ers are downplaying their interest in about trading him. He's the guy that we're expected is going to be traded for basically nothing, just salary filler. And the report the other week or the other day, when we initially talked about it, we heard the Kings were a team that were interested, and the Jazz and Sixers. So with that being said, the Kings, we know, are probably just offering Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter. The Utah Jazz, you'd have to assume the salaries that they're offering are definitely just throwaway salaries. And then the Sixers, they can just eat his contract. And I think he's like a last resort. If they don't get any of the free agents they want, I think he's a last resort for them. And still, like, Zach LaVine is the best option available in terms of guys who are borderline all NBA players. He's an all-star almost at this point. I mean, he's just health. But the report from Mark Stein of the Stein Line is that the Chicago Bulls will continue to seek out a trade for Zach LaVine, but his market is believed to be tepid. While the 76ers and the Utah Jazz have been linked with LaVine, sources have told Mark Stein that both teams do not have much interest in trading for him. LaVine's entering the third year of that 5-year deal, which is crazy that it's already 3 years into that deal, of a $215 million deal he signed in 2022. LaVine played only 25 games last year before undergoing season-ending foot surgery. Both the Bulls and Zach LaVine's camp are motivated to find a trade resolution. Chicago previously attempted to trade LaVine by attaching Alex Caruso to him. That trade scenario was taken off the board as Caruso was traded for a straight-up swap for Josh Giddey. Now, the Bulls are going to have to basically pay to move him, it seems like. At this point, unless the incoming deal is similarly bad, there are possibilities out there, but which one? Like LaVine for Ben Simmons? Chicago saves long-term money, and Brooklyn turns a dead roster spot into a maybe. And 2 contracts teams don't want are going to have to be involved. And like the one we just said in the Ben Simmons deal. I think it's bad for Brooklyn. 45, 49 million, and 26, 27, they would be adding to their cap. If I were them, I'd rather just let Ben Simmons go after 2025. In 2025, Brooklyn could have a massive amount of cap space, and I'd rather have that than take on Zach LaVine's max money into his 30s. I don't think Zach LaVine changes much for the Nets, especially when Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson both are players that are kind of playing the same position. And that's not working. I don't know. They already have money committed, and then we could send Cam to the bench or trade him. It's kind of fool's gold, but like it's still, I think it's hard. But let's go to the Fanspo trade machine and let's see what trades we could do for good old Zach LaVine. And to me, it's just how are we going to trade Zach LaVine if you're the Bulls? So Philadelphia, we already know they could just eat his contract, so we're not going to do a Philadelphia trade. But in the Kings, we already said it's Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes. That's the deal. So we're doing the Utah Jazz. What are the Utah Jazz going to give you? We know they want to trade John Collins. We do know that. And my thoughts is they give you probably Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton. That's basically the deal. And I think Sexton, it's too close to Kobe White, so you can't trade for him, in my opinion, at that point. So I would just do, at this point, if I were them, here's Jordan Clarkson. And guess what? I think that's the deal. Unless you're really like, oh, guess what? Take what's-their-face off our hands. And then the Bulls are like, okay. And they say, well, we don't want to just do this for free, so give us all your second-round picks. And the Bulls are like, okay. Because like they have nothing they can do. And they walk away with this deal with John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, and Darius Bazley. They give up 3 second-round picks and Zach LaVine. This way, they have Jordan Clarkson as a 6-man. John Collins fits next to Nikola Vucevic. He helps you replace Patrick Williams, and Darius Bazley gives you a guy off the bench. I fixed it. I don't know how much better you can do than this, ladies and gentlemen. Am I wrong for thinking that? I genuinely feel like this might be the best possible deal for Zach LaVine if you're able to even move him. Because at this point, it just doesn't seem quite possible that he's going to be someone that you're going to be able to move whatsoever because of how atrocious that contract is. And if there is a team that's going to take it, I feel like it's the Utah Jazz, because Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen, kind of like with Keontae George, I just feel like at that point, I don't know, it's better than what you are now. I think you're closer to a playoff squad than you were before. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, but it's better than Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes. I think it's better than, I think Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes might be your best deal at this point. And it's better than just getting maybe a random whatever Philadelphia would give you. And I feel like this is actually the most realistic, because Utah's in this weird like position. I don't know, guys. That one's just so weird. It's a weird one. But that's where I want to hear it. What do you guys think? So, Dallas Mavericks are trying to trade Tim Hardaway Jr. This is coming from Mark Stein at the Stein line, so you know it holds its weight in gold. Now, yes, the report is that the Mavericks will attempt to trade Tim Hardaway Jr., what seems like what they've been trying to do for months now. And I think the Dallas Mavericks are motivated to trade away Tim Hardaway Jr. this offseason. Tim Hardaway is entering the final season of his contract at $16.2 million for the 24-25 season. Jaden Hardy was playing more minutes in the playoffs than Tim Hardaway Jr., who had fallen out of the Mavericks rotations during this past playoff run. Hardaway appeared in 79 games this past year, 14.5 points, 30.5 rebounds, and just under 2 assists in 27 minutes a night. The Mavericks would like to re-sign Derrick Jones Jr., who became their starting small forward after signing to a bargain of a minimum deal this past offseason. And as always, what would you even be trading Tim Hardaway Jr. for? Is there a market for the guy? I really don't know, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, we can hop into the Fanspo trade machine because that's how we're gonna basically visualize what this trade could look. I personally think if you're trading Tim Hardaway Jr., you're going to probably looking to either pack it. I think Dwight Powell's on such a cheap deal that you'd want to keep him. You're keeping Dante Exum. You either keep Jaden Hardy and extend him or you trade him at this point. And outside of that, I think Maxi Kleber is another potential trade asset. So where do we look? I think the first place is you look is the Eastern Conference. And what are some contracts that come to mind when you look around? It becomes hard, ladies and gentlemen. It becomes hard. I don't know if Miami has any deals that interest you. I don't think they do. I don't think Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta could. I just don't think you should get into the DeAndre Hunter investment if you're going to re-sign DeAndre Jordan. I mean, DeAndre Jordan, my apology, ladies and gentlemen. Derek Jones Jr. So you got to go around and look for deals that who could take. You got to find a rebuilding team first off that's willing. So you look at the Wizards and the Pistons. So do the Wizards have like a Landry Shamet? Could you convince the Wizards to send you to go, okay, how about Tim Hardaway Jr. for Landry Shamet? And you tack in there, you throw them a second round pick for their troubles. Now, you ask a third team to come in. Do the Pistons have a contract that might intrigue you? And that could be like a Troy Brown Jr. And you could maybe also ask for, is Chemsy Metu under contract next year? Maybe you see if Chemsy's down to come over. And I think that's really it from this roster that you would want. I mean, maybe you ask for Stanley Umudu. I have no idea how to say his name, but what I'm gonna bring up here is, first off, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that intrigues you on that side, but there isn't. So you go around and then you say Maxi Kleber, goodbye, buddy, to the Wizards. And the Wizards at this point, or not the Wizards, my apology, to the Pistons. And I think this could be, you got to figure out how the compensation will work out. But, bro, I put Kleber on the Wizards, but he's literally right there. Try the trade. So right here, the Pistons, Wizards, and Mavericks. Mavericks walk away with Shamet, Brown, Metu. Again, doesn't have to be this many players, but the idea is basically Landry Shamet and Troy Brown Jr. to the Mavericks. Wizards get Tim Hardaway. Pistons get Kleber. And you could also say Tim Hardaway could just go by himself because you're hooking up the Wizards by taking on the second year of Landry Shamet's contract, and Hardaway isn't expiring. So you could really just say, guess what? We're doing you a favor by taking on this contract. So send that second round pick actually to the Pistons, who are more deserving of the pick due to the fact that they're a team that is taking on the second year of Kleber. But this way, you get yourself a insurance policy if Derek Jones were to leave. You get more bench scoring in Landry Shamet. You save $12 million, and you have Chemsy Metu and Stanley that you can bring into your training camp. And if they do work out, you have more bench pieces. If they don't work out, you just trade them. I just feel like, for what it's worth, you're really not. You have an opportunity to upgrade your roster, get some depth without having to worry about selling the farm to move off of some contracts. I just think finding like bargain deals like that might be more beneficial than going out and trying to find like two players. I feel like just doing something like that and then giving yourself the cap space to go into free agency to re-sign Derek Jones to a $12 million deal right there. You just save money. And yeah, I feel like that's just would be the better move out of those. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think with more and more time that passes, we'll see which players become available, and that's going to help, I guess, like finalize which players are going to be ones that could be sought after, or which players could be ones that have some availability that a team like the Mavs can go after and seek as a trade for by using Mr. Tim Hardaway Jr. as a trade piece. I think Cleveland gets tacked on to a trade because he's just an older guy that they might not be interested in keeping around as much. That's my 2 cents on that matter, but we'll see how that plays out. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole situation. I think it's interesting how they've been able to just put themselves in the position, conference finals 2 years ago, NBA finals this year. We'll just touch on this, but 8 centers could be drafted in the first round. Wow. And I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Shout out Jeremy Woo of ESPN for this information. I think one of the bigger things that you see with the NBA is I talked about this. It was funny that a few years ago we were treating NBA centers like running backs in the NFL, that they were going to, if you weren't a unicorn and you were the traditional center, it wasn't going to work out. But now, guys, people love centers again. If you're a unicorn, you're going to go top 5. But if you're not a unicorn and you're a somewhat mobile 6'9" to 7 foot, whatever, 250 plus pound guy who can set solid screens, rebound, contest shots at the rim, and be able to do a little bit of some DHOs and pass out the elbow and the low block, well, again, being able to move up and down the floor with some grace, you're going to be a first round pick because people like that. And there was only 3 first round picks in the 2020 second round draft. There was only 1 true center draft in the 2023 first round draft, and people have been acting like small ball is going to be the trend, but that's changing. We saw Derek Lively, who I think Khalil Ware could be the Derek Lively of this draft class. We've seen guys like, who else could we throw out there? That rookie center. I mean, Walker Kessler's another guy. Trace Jackson Davis. We're seeing guys be able to make an impact. I mean, even guys like not even rookies, but like Goga Bitsadeh and the Daniel Gaffords of the world, really just showing that they can make an impact, even if they're not the so-called unicorns. And I think that's the big thing that we're seeing and why people have interest in bigs again. And Donovan Clingan, Alex Sarr, Zach Edey, Kyle Filipowski, Yves Messi, and Khalil Ware are all almost guaranteed to be drafted within the top 30 picks. Deron Holmes and even maybe Adem Bona or somebody else, or Ulrich Chamanchi or somebody, could be drafted in that grouping. So I think that's something that's pretty wild. And currently, if we go to our latest kind of like our player rankings by, so Hoops Hypes, give me 1 second. Hoops Hype Centers 2024 NBA Draft. So here at Hoops Hype, we did a little, so according to our aggregate mock draft, this is the latest one we did, or did we did one on the 2024? Okay, yeah, this is the, according to our aggregate mock draft, these are our centers available in this year's NBA draft. And I'm going to just show it on the screen. Obviously, Alex Sarr is number 1. Donovan Clingan, 2. Alex Sarr has the potential to be like an Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson type guy if it all works out. He has the highest ceiling in this year's NBA draft. Donovan Clingan could be a more mobile, longer Jakob Poeltl with maybe a 3-point shot. Kyle Filipowski, people are saying, like, is a Kelly Olynyk. I say he could maybe be like a bigger Nas Reed. Yves Messi, everyone's saying is Clint Capella 2.0. Zach Edey's Boban Marjanovic. Khalil Ware, I really think could be like the Derek Lively of this year's class. I think he's underrated. Some people have said Willie Cauley-Stein, Christian Wood. PJ Hall's a fantastic guy, just a grind, gritty dude. And then we also have the other, like, pulled up. Let's go back. This one is from earlier. He's messy. Ethan Almanza dropped out the draft, but Osu Ighodaro is another guy that I think could be like the Trace Jackson Davis of this class. Adem Bona's just a genetic freak. Ugona pulled out of the draft. So did Aaron Bradshaw. Ariel Hakaporti is a big from Australia. He's just offensively, he's not going to give you much besides, rolling to the basket and stuff like that. But man, oh man, is he a physical player. So I'm not surprised that there's, reports of multiple bigs potentially going in the first, just how this draft is playing out. It does not surprise me. What does surprise me is how it seems like with more and more time, we're seeing that, I don't know, bigs still have an abundance of value in the NBA, even though people want to act like they were like falling out of like favor. And so it's just good to see that there's still a place for them, and rightfully so, in my opinion. But I don't know. I know some people are going to be like, bigs are worthless, let them die, which I just think is just so dumb, because look at all the teams that have won championships over the last few years, how much big men have played into their success. So I just think having a big is huge for you, and will continue to be huge for you regardless of said, factors. But yeah, I think that's how I feel about that one. But let's continue, and we got a few more topics that we're going to talk about. So what do we got right here? 8 more topics that we want to talk about that I feel like worth mentioning. So still got a little bit of a ride to do. So it's probably about at least 30 minutes to 40 minutes, maybe even an hour. We'll keep going. But guys, the next topic that I wanted to talk about was a guy that a lot of people, you should see what it is. I gotta talk about that. That's another. But either way, the thing I saw for Tobias Harris asking for a max contract and how he's going about it's pretty funny. Either way, Tobias Harris has interest from the Mavericks, Pistons, Pelicans, Spurs, and Jazz. I think the Pistons are the most likely, because you know what? If Troy Weaver stayed, maybe the Pistons. How does this go down? So this is coming from Chris Haynes of the Bleacher Report. Look, I know some people are going to be like, he's not a legit player. He doesn't show up in the big games. He's streaky. You're not a big fan of his. Who cares? Look, in the regular season, I think he's a solid third option. He was 61st in points per game, 50th in rebounds, 58th in steals, 58th field goal percentage. Look, he's 161st this past year in usage rate. So he is a fifth option on a really good team. And if he wants to be a scorer and get a lot of money, he's going to go to a bad team. But if he wants to be a guy on a championship team, he's going to be a guy who I think can be consistent. And unfortunately, he's been judged by his contract, which is one of the highest paid guys, and not by his productivity. And I think he brings you a guy that he's an 18, 7-3 guy. He's averaged that for a few years, and his shooting splits are all right. I think the Pistons make sense for him. I mean, 3 years, 80 from the Spurs would make a lot of sense for both sides. But a free agent, Tobias Harris, I think he's expected to leave Philadelphia. That's what Chris Haynes is saying. Harris wants to move on, and Philadelphia is prioritizing opening up cap space. The good news is he's not expected to have any shortage of suitors. The Dallas Mavericks, the Detroit Pistons, and New Orleans Pelicans, and San Antonio Spurs and Utah Jazz are all expected to have interest in signing Harris. Now, the Pelicans and Mavs would want to potentially use the mid-level exception for Tobias Harris. What does that mean? Well, the mid-level exception for 24 to 25 this upcoming year, teams that are all right. So basically, the standard mid-level exception is 12.8, and then 13.5 the following year. So basically, it would be like a $26.3 million 2-year deal if they did it. If they're a non-tax paying team, but if they are a tax paying team, it's like 5.1, which if the Pelicans are looking to sign somebody or looking to sign Tobias Harris to the standard and mid-level exception, that means they could potentially be looking at signing. He's looking at signing. The crazy thing is the Mavericks are a second apron team, so they could only offer him actually $5 million. So this is wild to me. As Crispy Haynes is saying, a guy, Tobias Harris, who averaged just under 18.6 half rebounds, 3 assists, and he's about to be 32. He shot 48% from the field, 35 from 3. But that the Mavs, Pelicans, two teams that are like, I believe, over the luxury tax, which they would only offer him $5 million a year, which would basically be a 2-year, $10 million. Definitely have a player option because he would opt out next year and retest. So if he doesn't get a good offer from the Pistons, the Spurs, or the Jazz, we're basically hearing he would then go to the Mavericks and Pelicans on a 1-year deal to make $5 million on a prove-it deal and go retest it next year. That is wild. That is wild. And I think one of that's wild. That's wild. That's wild. If I were the Philadelphia, I would try to sign and trade him. So we're going to say a sign and trade to the Spurs, and Jazz and Pistons are the most realistic. So let's go over to Fanspo and do that real quickly and then see what that could look like. I think that's where, if you look at Philadelphia, we're going to do, I like the 3-year $80 million for Tobias. Not a bad deal. And there you go. That's great. Recommended salary based on performance. 3-year 60.7. I like it. I like it, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll do first. Let's go ahead and do Detroit. With this, you can only send back half the money, so it can only be $10 million that Detroit could be sending them back. So Troy Brown Jr., really back to the other trade that we did earlier today, I think would be actually the trade tax. I think you get away with this. Yeah, outgoing. That's 8.7. If you really wanted, I don't see any other deal that you could just be like, oh, tack that and throw those in there. Like Marcus Sasser is not being thrown in this deal. And I feel like that would be the deal right here. And maybe you go, hey, give us the 54th pick in this year's draft. Give us, 3 seconds. And this would be the deal with the Pistons. This is not a bad deal. Yeah, you lose Tobias Harris, but you walk away with 3 second-round picks, 1 in this year's draft. So technically, you could have 4 players. Not a bad deal, okay? Not a bad deal. Next, we got Utah and San Antonio. What could Utah offer you? Again, it's $10 million that they could send back because of how it's working. So you'd hear you're 7. I mean, we're here. They had Darius Baisley already on the roster once. Do they bring him back? Do they also bring back Kenny Lofton? Because the easiest deal would be, I believe, something along these lines, right? Yeah, like you could argue that this deal right here, like I just said, I didn't send Tobias Harris. My apology, ladies and gentlemen. But right here, you put yourself Tobias Harris for, I guess this is a lot of bigs. Like we just gave you 4 front court players. Like why would they do this? Why would they do this? But hypothetically, they could do this. In this deal, they dish off of $20 million and then they save themselves, and they can only take back half. So that would be the deal. I don't see any other player being available in that sense from Utah. So let's go ahead to the last one, and that's San Antonio, who might actually have the best package to offer. Again, you're sending over a $20 million contract on Tobias Harris. You can only take back 10. And looking around, again, it would have to be a combination of like Champagny, Branham, Charles, and send us CD. And then you would assume maybe they give you the 8th pick in this year's draft. But there's so many young guys you just gave up in that deal. I personally don't see this being realistic, but in this case, yeah, you give him a point, you give him a guard, 2 wings, and a big, and the 8th pick in this year's draft. I still think that's an overpay. That's if they were to sign and trade. How realistic is that? You don't really know, but it's definitely something to talk about because of how the draft is being viewed and what are actually like viewed as decent trade assets. I don't know. That's up to the jury to decide. And we'll find out in a couple days. So for me, I think just being able to see what moves you could potentially make and how you could improve your team is really going to hinge on reading the market correctly and making sure that you make the right moves. What are those moves? I feel like definitely going to be dealer's choice. But that's where I want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you're a Tobias Harris fan, what do you guys expect? Seriously. I don't know what you expect. All right, let's talk about the next thing, and that is the Phoenix Suns. Yes, the Phoenix Suns are open to trading the number 22 pick. Look, they're tied to Tyler Kolek, and I think maybe if they're down to trade the pick, that means they know Tyler Kolek could be available a little later in the draft. Maybe that's the case. So the report is like the Suns are, I don't know. They sell the pick to cut salary. Could they package the pick with Naz Little and trade for a smaller salary? And I don't know. Let's talk about it. So this is coming from John Gambadoro of Arizona Sports, 98.7. The Phoenix Suns are open to trading the 2022 pick. Phoenix could move back in the draft to pick up additional draft capital or add a player via trade. The Suns haven't ruled out moving up in the draft if there is a player that they'd like to acquire. The pick is the only one Phoenix owns without conditions attached through 2030. The Phoenix has either traded or agreed to swap conditions on all of their other first and second round picks for the next 7 drafts. Nice. So, NBA draft order is going to be what's going to dictate what the picks are. What team has picked and what teams could interest them. So, Phoenix, unless the dream scenario for Phoenix would be that some player falls to 22nd. New York calls them, go like, hey, we want to move up to 22nd. We're scared someone's going to take the guy we want. We will give you both the 24th and 25th pick. You trade back. You now have 2 first-round picks. You then trade one of those picks to a team that has, several second-round picks in this year's draft or next year's draft. You pick up another second-round pick. Like, let's say, I think Oklahoma City Thunder have a bunch of second-round picks, and so does Indiana. And you call up Indiana, and you're like, hey, we'll give you a first-round pick if you give us a second-round pick in this year's draft, a second-round pick in next year's draft, and a second-round pick in a future draft. And that way you start to rebuild your draft cupboard a little bit with small assets that aren't too crazy, but you still then get the draft someone like a Tyler Kolek or, whoever they are, rumored to take. And right now with the draft predictor, I believe our draft predictor is saying that the Phoenix Suns are predicted. Still, Tyler Kolek is the guy that they're predicted to take, which at 22 is the guy there. If not, Isaiah Collier, Tristan Da Silva, and Carlton Carrington and Khalil Ware are guys that are rumored to be available. And if they were to trade back 2 picks, they could still go after guys like Ryan Dunn, Keyshawn George, Yves Messi, who are Johnny Furphy, old guys that I think could help them out. So I think there's room for them to make trades and to improve their roster. So I think it's all dependent on how they want to go about this offseason, as I think they're a team that it's very, 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 very obvious that they're making a push to try to build the back end of the roster with second round picks, in my opinion. Will it be easy? And not necessarily. but it is possible. And I think that's just one of those things that they're going to have to figure out if they're going to be able to do it. I feel for Phoenix Suns fans because you were a team that with like, it's a very weird, you guys have been in contention for championship for a few seasons now. Like it feels a little bit more further away. You were in an NBA finals just a few seasons ago. And I want to believe that Matt Ishbia is doing all the right things. I just don't know if that's going to be enough for, I mean, not all the right things, but has the right intentions. My apology. And I just don't know if that's going to backfire and bite this team in the butt because they're just trying to do too much. But hey, what do I know? What do I know? I'm just the guy who I just think it's just funny that they're going all in, and I know they went all in and they're, like he said, they have all good players on their team. It's just with the rules, it's going to be hard to continue to improve their roster, and you'd be lying if you didn't believe that, in my opinion. So that's my 2 thoughts on that one. What do you guys think? Now let's talk about another owner who likes to get excited. Yes. Another owner who likes to get excited is a man by the name of Tom Gores. So Tom Gores wants Pistons to add players in free agency. All right. You also want this team to be good. In several off seasons with Troy Weaver leading the front office, the Detroit Pistons spent a lot of cap space by absorbing bad contracts from other teams. Pistons owner Tom Gores wants to change that. He wants to have players who are active. It's not good enough to be a free agent, come over and not play. The Pistons are projected to have over $60 million in cap space this summer. Detroit can be inactive in going after veterans to help a team that went 14-68. Trajan Langdon is expected to be the one to lead this, era, as he is the president of basketball operations. He has a more open-minded approach. And with the cap space, we're looking to take on contracts and add assets as well. And what does that mean? What do you go after? Who's a contract you go after? I think is Zach LaVine something that entices you? Do you ask for Zach LaVine in the first round pick? Free agents wise, who wants to go to Detroit? Let's talk about it. Tobias Harris, a 3-year, $80 million deal. Is that good enough for you? Do you go after James Harden? All right. He still could be a part of a team that could be good. He's a good playmaker still, tough shot maker. Does he want to go to Detroit? Probably not. Miles Bridges, he's Michigan ties, a bouncy, strong swingman who averaged 21 points, thrives in transition, can slash to the basket, has developed into a solid outside shooter. Averaged 21, 7, 3 on 46 and 35. And he'll be cheaper than what he normally would cost because of the other stuff, off the court stuff. You can give him a contract that protects you. You got Tobias Harris, who averaged 17, 6, and 3 on 48 and 35. He's somewhat versatile defensively and offensively. He can score in space, off the dribble, in the post. He's a floor spacing forward, and he fits what they need. Another guy, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a solid defensive two-way guard who can play the 2 or the 3, spaces the floor, won a championship twice, and knows his role. Klay Thompson, another guy who can put up shots, help you win games, and fits what they need in a shooter. As well as Buddy Hield, who he didn't play great as the Sixers when many thought he'd look great on a contender, but he's a solid outside shooter. He put up 12, 3, and 3 last year on 43 and 38. So I think those are guys that if you're looking for people to help raise the ceiling, could come in and help you raise the ceiling. I don't know if it's worth it in terms of just going ahead and just saying like, yeah, that's it. That's what we want to do. So I don't know. what do you guys think and why? I'm curious to hear your opinions on what is the expectation with the Detroit Pistons, and if you were the Pistons, how would you fix this team in terms of coming in here and making them a better squad in the short term, or sooner rather than later? I think that's what they're trying to solve. So I'm curious. I think there are solutions out there. It's just dependent on how you want to go about it, and I think how you go about it will depend on what you're trying to do as a team. If you're trying to win now and you believe this team can compete, or if you're trying to still take the slow approach. I mean, you're gonna have to pay Cade Cunningham sooner rather than later. So I think you should figure this one out. Now, Kenny Atkinson's expected to become the head coach of Cleveland Cavaliers. So let's say a toast to Kenny Atkinson. That's good, ladies and gentlemen. Kenny Atkinson, ladies and gentlemen, is expected to finally become a head coach again. I know someone's going to be like, well, he did become a head coach, and then he backed out of the Charlotte Hornets job. Well, would you want the Charlotte Hornets job under Michael Jordan? He probably saw the writing on the wall. And then they went to Steve Clifford for 2 years. Now, Mark Stein of the Stein Line reports the candidacy of Kenny Atkinson for the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers is gaining steam. However, don't be surprised, Michael Nori is in contention, and James Borrego had emerged as the favorite for the job, but Atkinson is being strongly considered, which for me, I understand is Kenny Atkinson's the guy they probably want. James Borrego is an offensively creative-minded coach. Kenny Atkinson's a really good player development. You know, he pulls stuff out of players, and he's a very good, even-keeled coach. And he was fired by the Brooklyn Nets as a head coach in 2020 and has worked as the lead assistant under Steve Kerr with the Golden State Warriors. In 2022, he agreed to become the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, but decided ultimately not to take the job. As I had mentioned earlier, Mike Nori is under consideration for the job as well, and so is James Borrego. The Cavaliers parted way with J.B. Bickerstaff soon after they were eliminated in the playoffs. And now Kenny Atkinson being a potential coach for the Cavaliers is one I really like, because he's a guy that I think he brings the grit, he brings the championship type of, he's been on good teams. And for me, I think I think the part of the reason why James Borrego is not the running candidate is Trajan Langdon got the job and fired Monty Williams, and then called up James and was like, look, you know me, I know you. If you come here, we know how this organization is going to run a lot better. So regarding the Cav search, on Thursday night, James Borrego seemed to be the clear front runner. However, Kenny Atkinson's quickly gaining, traction, and the situation seems fluid. And I think what they're doing is they're not dragging their feet. I think they're just interviewing candidates and grabbing them face to face. And as they talk, I think they're just falling in love with other candidates. And for me, it makes sense that I think Mike Nori is a little too green behind the ears. I think Kenny Atkinson is going to be a guy that is going to come in and be able to run the team. And again, I think James Borrego is going to be the Pistons coach, Kenny Atkinson for the Cavs, and then obviously JJ Redick went to the Lakers. And to me, it just makes sense for how this is all playing out, especially with what we knew about the organization heading into this. So I think them going after Kenny just makes the most sense. So I like this one for everybody involved. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you're a Cavaliers fan, who did you want as head coach? I think Kenny's he gets an opportunity. He has shown repeatedly that he is a very good and competent coach, and one that I've been waiting to see get back on the sidelines for a long time. So I'm very excited to see that he's going to be back. And yeah, I'm excited. I want to hear your guys' thoughts if you're a Kenny Atkinson fan, and if you like the idea of him going to the Cavaliers or not. Definitely an interesting bit of information that we're seeing with how the season has progressed, or off season has progressed. in terms of hirings from an executive standpoint to where the coaching cycle is going, and that is as a result of how the executive movement has happened, like with Trajan Langdon, and then of course what we saw earlier going on with, I guess it would be just the Pistons being the biggest one that happened this offseason, but that was my 2 cents on that. Either way, let's get to the next topic in a second. I wanted to say, what's up, Mr. 81? By the way, yeah, I think the Grizzlies should make a trade. I mean, they have to win a second time to be able to go for a three-peat. I like how there's a champion every year. Makes it different. And any Rockets news, just kind of draft stuff. I appreciate you, man. Just keep grinding, keep doing your thing. And just like, whatever you feel passionate about, just keep doing it. But how long does the Hornets have? They have to basically June 30th to figure this out. And then, when free agency starts, they can keep doing it. It's just about how they're going to go about it. It's probably going to be a sign and trade. So give this 2 weeks. You're going to hear something within the next 2 weeks. Let's get into the next topic, ladies and gentlemen. And that is going over to the Western Conference. We have to talk about, isn't it crazy? A few months ago or a year ago, this guy was one of the hottest players in his draft class, a guy that people were acting like the Jazz got a steal, and now they're saying they're going to trade him. It is crazy how you can go from being someone who is beloved within the franchise to somebody who might become an afterthought. Yep, that's where we're at. The Jazz could be listening to trades on Walker Kessler. Crazy. Just as they do a rebrand. The whole thing with Walker Kessler, I like the kid. But Walker Kessler was a kid who went from his rookie season. He played literally the same minutes, but he went from being 72% and 30% from the field to 65 and 21, 8.5 rebounds to 7.5. He was still a good rim protector, like averaging over 2 blocks a game. But I think offensively, if we realize maybe he wasn't that. It's just he might be close to a finished product, and this might be the guy. He's the guy who gives you like 9 and 8, maybe like 10 and 10, a few blocks. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's a guy who's probably going to be a borderline top 15 center in the NBA. But does he fit with John Collins? Does he fit with Lauri Markkanen? Does he fit with the Utah Jazz and what they're doing? Jake Fisher said that the Jazz could listen to trade offers for Walker Kessler. Average 8, 7.5, 2.5 in 23 minutes. He was all rookie first team. And somebody's going to be like, what if they did a Walker Kessler for Zach LaVine? Why would they do that? So that's just where it gets hard. And you look around, you see what the trades are, and you think, like, who could they go after? Like, the one that does kind of make sense for me, and we'll pull it up on the screen right now, because for me, when I look at this, I think, okay, if they wanted to go get Brandon Ingram, the Pelicans want a big man. They want a big man. They've made this very, very clear that they wanted a big man. And I've gone here and I thought, this actually makes sense. So the Pelicans have said they don't want to pay Mr. Brandon Ingram. And Walker Kessler is a guy that could interest the Pelicans. And the other thing is the Pelicans are a team that are trying to get off the tax apron. So if you look at the contracts that are available, I think going in, I guess Jordan Clarkson, I guess this past season, Colin Sexton was worth. So in this deal, you are saving money. So what if this deal happens? Brandon Ingram for Colin Sexton and Walker Kessler. I think this, no picks involved, straight up. This way, you save $15 million. You save $15 million if you're the Pelicans. And you're thinking, why would the Pelicans want to save that much money? So heading into next season, the luxury tax is at $171 million. And if you were to able to save $15 million and you're New Orleans, you're currently projected to be at $150 million heading into there. So you saving $15 million on next year's bill brings you to what, 135. Okay. And that's pretty nice that you just saved $15 million and you're at $135 million now. And your free agents this offseason are only Najee Marshall, Cody Zeller, and Jonas Valanciunas that are really important. And you still could go out and spend a little bit of money. So for me, I just think, golly, this is not a bad move. If you're the Jazz, you walk away with Brandon Ingram. You can also say, well, I feel like Colin Sexton's too good. That's fine. Guess what? This is what we'll do. Instead of Colin Sexton, we'll go ahead and do Jordan Clarkson. It's the same idea, and you send it over. Boom. I still think someone would say this is an even better deal. Jordan, you get a backup guard who could be a six-man for the Pelicans. You get the center that they want, who's young, and he's still got 2 more years on his deal. Jazz get a guy who can help raise their floor. I think it's one of those deals that I think everybody wins, and it's one that people will be interested in because everybody wins. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you were a part of this, what would you, or if you were in the front office, what would you do and why? I definitely think it's interesting just to see how, what the deal could be structured like. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I just think with a team like the Jazz and the Pelicans, they would be both motivated to do a deal like this. Salary cap reasonings, and as well as just being, I think this helps both teams fill a need that, is kind of keep holding them back. So why not? That's my thoughts. And I know that maybe might not be the best reason, but I thought so. So let me hear your guys' thoughts. What would you do? So where are we with this next topic? And that is, we're talking about a big boy, a guy who's been in the league for a little bit. And that is Jerami Grant. Yes, Dallas Mavericks, according to Sportsnet's New York, specifically SNY, but I want to get through Ian Begley. Jerami Grant's a guy that the Mavericks are watching. 30 years old, entering the second year of that $160 million deal. He's a team that several teams in the Mavericks are watching. And for me, I think that's a perfect guy. Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, and let's figure out the rest of that assets. It just works. It works. And then you have P.J. Washington, Jerami Grant, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and then rotate in Daniel Gafford and my apology, Derek Lively. And then you still have Derek Jones Jr. Oh my God. That is a squad. And you still have Dante Exum. Maybe we throw in Jay and Hardy as a cushion, but you still got Omax. You still got, wow, that is a fantastic. You still have Dwight Powell and Josh Green. Wow. You would make this team so much better if you were able to pull off a deal like that. So let's get right to it and use our handy-dandy, our favorite application to use, and that is the Fanspo trade machine. Because when we look at this, ladies and gentlemen, I think the interesting part about a deal like this is we're going to look at, as I mentioned before, Maxi Kleber with Tim Hardaway Jr. And would you think that they would have to throw in Jaden Hardy just as good measure as kind of like a sweetener? And we'll say it's just a sweetener. And the deal would then be Jerami Grant, right there, because you're sending 29.2 and 29.7 is coming out. And I guess that you would have to just be like, we'll offer you 2 second-round picks and just hope that this is the deal. Yeah. So you give up Tim Hardaway Jr., Kleba, and Jaden Hardy. You're only taking on $580,000 on salary. You give up 2 second-round picks, and now you have Jerami Grant on the team. How could you not want to do that deal? I feel like that's just a fantastic deal that everybody involved is winning. So I know the salary would be salary that like you're taking on and you got to now consider, and you probably every season would have to be making moves to kind of like finesse around the second aprons and stuff. But I just think you putting yourself in that position to have a guy like Jerami Grant on the team, oh my God, man. As we mentioned, we still have Luka, Kyrie, PJ, Daniel, Josh, Derek, Dwight, Dante, Omax, and then you have Mr. Jerami Grant on that team. All right, and half those guys, really, the lineup will be Luka, Kyrie, PJ, Daniel, Josh, Derek, Dante, and Jerami. And that's a 9-man rotation. That's probably one of the best in the entire NBA. So for me, it's just why not is more the question, because of how good that team could be. And I think the biggest thing that would hold you back from being able to do that is the assets that Portland could potentially be asking for, which we know could be exuberant. So I think that's the biggest concern you're having when you're looking at a situation like this. And I understand if you don't want to fully go into it. Now, another person said THJ, Tim Hardaway Jr., the 2025 unprotected first and Maxey for the thing. I think we got to throw in Jaden Hardy right there for salary purposes to basically keep it the same. And yeah, I think that could be it. That could be the deal. I like this one, Victor. This is good. I would just add, so let's just to wrap it up. We would basically, I think we keep Jaden Hardy though, and instead of the 2 second-round picks you're saying, we'll do lottery protected though, just in case. And that is the better deal. I agree with that. That is the better deal. So, and I think, what ends up happening right here, this is live, guys. It's a live upload of what he recorded. No, I clipped these afterwards. So yeah, no, I think this is definitely interesting. So let's get to the next thing that I want to talk about. And what else? Let's get to the next thing. So we got Chris Paul. Mr. Chris Paul. So the expectation is they're going to push back Chris Paul's guarantee date. So basically, I think it is, hey, we're going to move your guarantee date from June 28th to sometime in July. In exchange, we'll guarantee you like $5 million. Here's $5 million. And then we'll look to move you later on. But we're hearing that Chris Paul, if he actually makes it a free agency at some point this year, expectation is, let's say he gets traded to Portland or for like Matisse Thybulle, Tamani Camara, and Robert Williams. That's absurd. But the idea is you trade him for multiple contracts. Now, what multiple contracts are out there, that's up for people to decide. After he gets traded, he's expected to be cut and then to test free agency, and he'll go back to Los Angeles, either to the Clippers or the Lakers. Expectation at this point is to go to the Lakers. He's played for the Clippers, and he's good friends with LeBron. Never played with LeBron. Let's play with LeBron. And for me, when I look at this situation, I do think it's rather interesting, as the Warriors have maintained the desire to bring Chris Paul. Well, I guess the bring back Thompson and then move Chris Paul, as they're trying to use Chris Paul's non-guaranteed contract as like a flexible trade tool. And they're just looking for those deals. So right now they're just looking for a deal that can get them there. So what would that look like if we were just to hop in right here and try to find something that would allow them to make a move. So we know Brook Lopez is on the block, so we'll look at that real quickly because I do actually think that's an interesting one as he's on a rather cheap deal and they have a young player that I think they could be interested in. And so look, this one actually kind of excites me. $23 million on an expiring Brook Lopez, and you're like, why would they want Brook Lopez? I just think he fits that team really well, and it doesn't even have to be Brook Lopez because the other thing is they could say, actually, we don't want Brook Lopez. How about we do Marjon Beauchamp? And I think they really value. So I just want to make sure that do you think they really value AJ Green? Do they? Because my whole thought process right here, what if you just say Bucks are unable to do this deal? I forgot. So the Bucks, yes. The Bucks wouldn't be able to do it, but the idea would be it would have to be Brook Lopez, and then the Warriors, maybe you do a 53rd pick, and then next year's second round pick. So would this be able to be done if you do it this way? I don't think so. Okay, you could. So hypothetically, and then the Bucks would waive Chris Paul, and Warriors walk away with Brook Lopez, Marjon Beauchamp, AJ Green. I don't think this deal happens. The more we look at it, I think that deal doesn't happen. Now, what's the team? The Magic, I just don't think they have the contracts that would, it would have to be a Joe Ingles. We talked about this last time. Joe Ingles and Caleb Houston would be the deal. And you're really not setting the world on fire. There's also the idea of Cole Anthony in there. I doubt it. Again, you'd have to send them the picks that we were talking about earlier. Here's a pick this year and a pick next year, and then you send Chris Paul, and that's the only way I'm seeing that deal happen, because that way, you get yourself Cole Anthony and Chris Paul. But again, I don't see that being a deal that sets the world on fire for the Magic. And Pistons don't have contracts that they're trying to get off. The Hawks are the one that intrigue me. And you're like, why? Because a few guys, AJ Griffin. So the biggest deal that I could see is right there. We're at 25 million. Could a deal like this happen? Garrison Matthews, Bruno Fernando, and then you send out Chris Paul in this deal. And this is a deal where the Hawks would be like, we want to get off of DeAndre Hunter. We don't care for him. And then you would try to trade Andrew Wiggins after this. And then AJ Griffin, Bruno Fernando, Garrison Matthews give you depth guys. Hawks waive Chris Paul. Then you could add a third team. Let's say the Spurs want to get into a deal for Andrew Wiggins. So what would an Andrew Wiggins trade then? Not to the Hawks, my apology. This is just where we're getting excited now. Spurs want Andrew Wiggins to help. Would this be the team that Andrew Wiggins go to? Does Andrew Wiggins go to a team like the Spurs? Because I was going to say then the Spurs are just like, all right, we're trying to get off of this. So Devontae Graham to the Warriors, and then to help reciprocate with the Hawks, you're like, oh, Hawks, we won't gut your roster. There you go. I just want to see if this works. Yeah. So the idea would be, I mean, the Warriors, you never get the Warriors would cut Devontae Graham, and they'd probably cut Garrison Matthews. But the idea would be you get off Andrew Wiggins, you get off Chris Paul, and you bring in DeAndre Hunter, Trey Jones, and AJ Griffin are the main guys. But again, it's too much going on. So let's just do one more that I do actually like the idea of Andrew Wiggins being moved in a deal with Chris Paul. But I feel like that's okay, let's send Andrew Wiggins to. Also, we're going to take off the Hawks from this. And what's a team with cap space? Let's say the Pistons. And the Pistons could send you Troy Brown, who I think would be useful. And I really think that's the only player that if you're the Warriors, you're sitting there and you're like, okay. Because right here, if you look at it, I think the best deal. Okay. Now, my thoughts is in a deal like this. You have outgoing 25 million, incoming 30 right there. I think the Nets keep Ben Simmons, but in a deal like this, are you trying to get off of Dorian Finney-Smith and Dennis Schroeder? So I'm thinking about the fact that a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith is who the Warriors would want. I think he had to base you up. At this point, I think the Warriors getting 4 players is more than enough. So, and then they would still try to move off of some salary. And I think that's the only one is Dennis Schroeder, and that's to the Pistons, to give the Pistons. I guess they would have a heavy hand in depth, but in a deal like this, I think this works because Wiggins and Fournier to the Nets, and then the Warriors walk away with really Dorian Finney-Smith is the best player, and then you just have salary filler. I mean, Troy Brown Jr. gives you some depth, so does Kate to base you up, and then Chemsy Metu could be guys that help you out. Pistons walk away. Chris Paul's going to get waived. Dennis Schroeder gives you a backup, like a 6-man to actually help this team, and then the Nets, you get actually Andrew Wiggins next to next to Johnson and Mikal Bridges. The two-way ability of that team is actually not decent. So and then Chris Paul ends up getting waived, and then he ends up in LA or something like that. I just think that's what you have to do if you're trying to move Chris. That's it. We're done for today, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Like, comment, subscribe. You can go back, listen if you missed anything. If not, I will immediately begin clipping these, and they should all be uploaded at some point today as individual videos. Let me know your thoughts if you guys did like this. This is kind of what I've been doing now. What we're doing specifically is when I need to record multiple topics, like just now, I don't even know how many topics we just knocked out. We just did at least 3, 6, 9, 12, like 15 videos I just recorded in a row. And as we recorded it, I just went ahead. I'll go afterwards and clip it. But CP3 to the Nets, I mean, again, as any team goes to the Nets, I mean, if CP3 gets traded to any team, he's going to get cut. CP3, if he's traded to a team, he's going to get cut. CP3 is not going to be traded to a team to remain on the team, unless it's like the Spurs. But outside of that, you guys are fun. Outside of that, it's nothing too crazy. So I hope you guys did enjoy. I'm going to head out and start editing. Ciao.